There is a man in history who watched his father get poisoned when he was 9 years old. He watched his mother get abandoned by her own tribe in the middle of the Mongolian steppe with 7 children and no food. He was kidnapped, enslaved, and had a wooden collar locked around his neck like an animal. His wife was abducted by a rival clan. He nearly starved to death more than once. And this same man went on to build the largest contiguous empire in human history. He didn't do it despite his trauma. He did it because of what he chose to do with it. His name was Temüjin. The world would come to know him as Genghis Khan. And before we go any further, if this kind of content hits different for you, subscribe right now, because every single week we go deep. Not surface level motivation, not feel good quotes. Real history, real psychology. Real tools that actually change how you think and how you live. Subscribe, let's get into it. Most people think trauma is a wound that needs to be healed. That's the wrong frame entirely. I say it because that framing keeps millions of people stuck for decades. The therapy world has done incredible things, but it has also accidentally taught an entire generation to see themselves as permanently damaged, to sit in their pain like it's a room they live in, to describe themselves by what happened to them. I'm a trauma survivor. I have childhood wounds. My attachment style is anxious because of my father. All of that might be clinically accurate, and it is completely useless as an identity. Genghis Khan never once, in any recorded account, described himself as a victim of his childhood. Not once. And his childhood was genuinely horrific by any standard. Let's actually go there, because most people only know the conqueror. They don't know the boy. When Temüjin was 9, his father Yasuge took him on a journey to find him a bride from a neighboring tribe. On the way home, Yasuge stopped to eat with a group of tatters, an enemy clan. They recognized him and poisoned his food. He made it back to camp, but died within days. 9 years old, his son watched him rot from the inside out and couldn't do anything. What happened next is the part that breaks you, if you really sit with it. The tribal elders, the people who were supposed to protect them, decided that a widow with young children was a liability. They packed up and left. Every single family in the clan. They abandoned Temüjin's mother Holon, in the middle of one of the most brutal landscapes on earth, the Mongolian steppe in the 12th century. No shelter infrastructure, no safety net, just steppe grass and wind and predators in winter. Holon fed her children by digging up roots with her bare hands. She fed them wild garlic and berries and whatever she could find. She taught her sons to fish. Temüjin later recalled this period as the thing that showed him what a human being is actually capable of when survival is the only option on the table. Then it got worse. A rival clan, the Taikutis, the same people who abandoned them, came back not to help but to kidnap Temüjin. They were threatened by the growing boy. They put a kong around his neck. A kong is a wooden collar, usually used for criminals and slaves. It immobilizes your arms, makes it impossible to sleep properly, strips your dignity at the most basic physical level. He was kept as a slave. He escaped, with the help of a man named Sorkin Shira, who risked his own life to hide him. Temüjin crawled through a river at night to avoid trackers. He survived. Then, in his early 20s, his wife Bert, the woman he loved and had fought to marry, was kidnapped by the Merket tribe. She was gone for months. When she came back, she was pregnant. Temüjin raised that child, Joki, as his own. He never publicly humiliated Bert. He never discarded her. He integrated the wound into his life and kept moving. Now here's what I want you to really absorb, because this is where most trauma content fails you. It tells you to process your feelings. It tells you to grieve. It tells you to be gentle with yourself. And again, there's a time and a place for that. But what Genghis Khan's life actually teaches is something far more demanding and far more powerful. And it comes down to 5 raw truths that you will not hear in most places. The first truth is that your story is not your identity, it is your fuel. Temüjin could have defined himself as the orphaned, enslaved, abandoned son of a poisoned chieftain. Every single fact would have been accurate. Instead, he defined himself by where he was going. The Mongols had a concept embedded in their culture, the idea that the sky, Tengri, had a will, and that a man's job was to align himself with that will through action, not through suffering. Trauma in the Mongolian worldview was not a psychological event to be analyzed. It was whether you don't sit in the rain crying about the rain, you build a shelter, or you ride through it. This is psychologically verifiable. The research on post-traumatic growth, and this is real, peer-reviewed science, shows that the people who recover fastest and most completely from trauma are not the ones who spend the most time processing it. They are the ones who construct a new narrative around it fastest. Not a fake narrative, not toxic positivity, a real one where the suffering has a function. Viktor Frankl survived Auschwitz and wrote Man's Search for Meaning. His entire thesis was this: the last human freedom is the ability to choose your response to any given circumstance. Genghis Khan never read Frankl. He just lived it 8 centuries earlier. The second truth is that isolation after trauma will kill you slower than any enemy. One of the most documented turning points in Temüjin's early life was the moment he stopped trying to survive alone and started building alliances. His blood brotherhood with Chamukha, his submission, and it was a deliberate, strategic submission to the powerful Khan Togrul. He was not too proud to seek help. He was not too damaged to trust again after being betrayed repeatedly. He understood something that modern trauma culture often gets completely backwards. Healing is not a solo project. The neuroscience on this is overwhelming. Bessel van der Kolk, one of the most respected trauma researchers alive, wrote in The Body Keeps the Score that humans are biologically wired to heal in community. The nervous system co-regulates, meaning your nervous system literally calms down in the presence of safe, regulated other nervous systems. Isolation after trauma doesn't give you space to heal. It gives your nervous system nothing to co-regulate with, so it stays locked in threat mode indefinitely. This is why solitary confinement is considered torture. This is why grief without community becomes complicated grief. You are not designed to carry this alone. Temüjin knew this not from science, but from the bone-deep experience of what abandonment actually does to a person. The third truth is the one people hate the most. Forgiveness is not for the other person. It is a tactical decision you make for yourself. When Temüjin finally rose to power, he had the opportunity to annihilate the Merket, the Taykud, and the Tatars who had destroyed his family. And he did, in many cases, destroy them militarily. But what is less discussed is what he did with the people who helped him. He remembered every act of loyalty, every small kindness, every person who risked something for him when he had nothing. Sorkin Shira, who hid him when he escaped slavery, was found and rewarded decades later when Temüjin had an empire. He carried his gratitude the same distance he carried his grievances. The psychological point here is not that you should forgive and forget in the passive doormat sense that phrase usually implies. The point is that unprocessed resentment is a cognitive load. It takes up working memory. It hijacks your attention. Studies on rumination show that chronic ruminators have higher rates of depression, anxiety, and cardiovascular disease. Rumination doesn't process the trauma, it reinforces it. Every time you replay the thing that hurt you, you are literally re-traumatizing your nervous system. The body does not know the difference between memory and present experience. Genghis Khan was tactical about his enemies. He didn't waste energy hating people he had already defeated. He moved to the next objective. The fourth truth is that most of your trauma responses were once survival mechanisms, and you have to thank them before you can release them. Temüjin grew up hyper-vigilant. On the step, missing a threat meant death. As a result, he became extraordinarily good at reading people, anticipating betrayal, and preemptively neutralizing threats. These are the exact traits that made him an unparalleled military commander. The same wiring that was installed by childhood trauma became his greatest strategic asset. You have versions of this in your own life. The person who grew up in chaos and became hyper-organized, the person who was emotionally neglected and became the most empathetic person in the room because they learned to read micro-expressions out of necessity, the person who was humiliated and built a relentless work ethic to prove something. None of these are healthy origins. All of them can be redirected. The mistake is trying to amputate the response without understanding its original function. You have to look at your most destructive patterns and ask, honestly, when did this save me? What was this response built to protect? Because until you answer that, you will keep fighting yourself, and you will lose. Because that part of you is fighting for your life, and it does not negotiate. The fifth truth is the most important and the most uncomfortable. Nobody is coming to save you, and that is the greatest gift you will ever receive. When Temüjin's clan abandoned his family, there was a brief period where his mother Holan waited. She expected someone to come back. No one did. And the moment she accepted that, truly accepted that, she became formidable. She stopped waiting and started doing. And she raised a son who never, at any point in his life, waited for rescue. This is not a statement about not asking for help. We already covered that you need community. This is about the psychological posture of agency versus victimhood. There is a very specific moment in every person's recovery from serious trauma where the pivot happens. Researchers call it the locus of control shift. It is the moment you stop asking why did this happen to me, and start asking what am I going to do with this. That shift cannot be forced by a therapist, a friend, a book, or a YouTube video. It can only be chosen by you, and it is a choice. It is not a feeling that arrives. It is a decision you make before you feel ready, before it makes sense, before the pain is gone. Genghis Khan didn't wait until the wounds healed. He rode with the wounds. He built an empire with wounds. He changed the shape of the world with wounds. And centuries later, historians estimate that 0.5% of the entire male population of Earth carries his genetic lineage. Whatever you think of his methods, the man was not stopped by his pain. You will not be either, but only if you stop waiting for permission. Stop waiting for closure that may never come. Stop waiting for the people who hurt you to acknowledge what they did. They may never. It doesn't matter. Your life is not on hold pending their apology. Take the rawness of what happened to you. Take the anger, the grief, the confusion, the shame, all of it, and do what Temüjin did. Build something with it, not in spite of it. With it, the step is brutal. The step doesn't care about your feelings, and the step is exactly where empires are born. If this video genuinely helped you, and I mean actually helped you, not just entertained you, please like it right now. It takes 2 seconds and it tells the algorithm that this kind of deep, real content is worth showing to more people. And subscribe if you haven't. We do this every week. Real history, real psychology, real tools, no fluff, no filler. Just the stuff that actually matters. I'll see you in the next one.